So another day, more transfer portal news for us to talk about. And don't worry, we're going to be covering all the spring game action tomorrow and Saturday while the spring games are happening. There's plenty for us to discuss there, but with all the movement in the transfer portal, there are some topics we have got to get to first, including the Alabama Crimson Tide having yet another defensive back enter the transfer portal, this time Tre'quan Fegans, and USC looking to get a massive win out of the transfer portal, something we have got to discuss. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you believe we're going to see more movement before the transfer portal closes? Let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed this content, be sure to like and comment down below, as those interactions seem small, but they are massive to content creators such as myself, and we're on a push to 20,000 subscribers. I'd love to have you a part of this unbelievable community. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And we're going to start with another Alabama defensive back testing the transfer portal, the second in as many days. This time, Tre'quan Fegans, the defensive back who just came to Alabama in the class of 2022. And in that class, Fegans was a top 150 prospect in the nation, top 15 cornerback. Specifically, if we look overall, he ranked as the number 117 prospect, the number 14 cornerback in the nation, and the number 7 player in the state of Alabama, having attended Thompson High School, which we know, first and foremost, is always producing blue chip prospects. So what does this mean for the Crimson Tide? Well, this is one I have no doubt in a perfect world you probably would have loved to have hang on to Fegans. He is a very talented prospect. I think he's got a really high upside. And much like Robinson, I don't think he's going to be on the transfer portal market for very long for several different reasons. And we'll quickly rehash those because some of them are the exact same as Robinson. First and foremost, Fegans has still got a lot of eligibility, and I think that's going to be a really big plus for someone who's looking in the transfer portal for a defensive back. Secondly, look who he was coached by. Anytime you can get a defensive back that's transferred from Alabama that's worked with Nick Saban, Travaris Robinson, I think teams are going to be compelled to look at that defensive back and say, yeah, we'd love to get him into this room. We know he's faced great competition in practice. We know he's been coached by the best. That's a guy we'd love to get in here. And finally, it's how talented Fegans is. I think he's got a really high ceiling, and because of that, I think teams are going to be after him. But one thing we need to talk about is what this means for Alabama, because Alabama is still at 86 scholarships, and they need to get to 85. So I think there's going to be more portal movement coming from the Crimson Tide. But specifically, what does this mean for that Alabama secondary? We talked yesterday about how there's a lot of young guys pushing and really turning heads, but at the same time, you want to ensure that you have enough depth to be able to successfully go out there and feel good about not only what you have on the field, but in the event of an injury, what you have to replace what's on the field. And luckily for the Crimson Tide, they really recruited the defensive back position at a very elite level. One thing we need to remember, Des Ricks is on campus, a 5-star who reclassified. Ricks was a top 10 player in the class of 2024 before reclassifying to the class of 2023, where he remained a 5-star prospect. That's how gifted he is. Now, he's young. He's got a lot of learning to do, but the upside is undeniable. And then you have Antonio Kite. So there are several names we can talk about, but at the end of the day, what you're hoping is that there's enough depth developing outside of the guys we referenced yesterday when we're talking about Terry and Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Earl Little, Christian Story, Malachi Moore, and Caleb Downs. Those are the names I'm looking at to be really active in that secondary. So can a Ricks come along? Can an Antonio Kite? Something we're going to need to watch, but there's no questioning the talent either of those individuals have, and because of that, I'm really excited about the Alabama secondary, but I'm also very curious as to where the movements will come from next, because as I referenced, Alabama's at 86 players right now. They have one more to go before they get to 85, so this is something we have got to watch. But let's move on to another player in the SEC who entered the transfer portal, and USC is looking to get a massive win, and of course today, we're talking about Bear Alexander, and Bear Alexander did not just enter the portal. He entered the portal a few days ago. We lightly touched on this on Monday's live stream, but that does not diminish from the impact Bear Alexander could make if he was to end up with Lincoln Riley and USC. Because one thing we've talked about over and over again when it pertains to USC, I don't think anybody in their right mind has any questions for the offense. With Caleb Williams returning, with who your head coach is and quasi-offensive coordinator, and then you go out and pick up Kingsbury, I don't think there's anybody out there that's questioning the offense. You have the pieces, you have the quarterback, you have the scheme. What's the defense going to do? Because that's been the one thing that's held Lincoln Riley back for so long, is the defensive side of the football. It held him back when he was at Oklahoma, and his first year at USC, it held him back there. However, anytime we're talking about his first year at USC, I do feel the need to be as objective and reasonable as possible. And one thing we have to understand, he didn't inherit a ready-to-go program at USC. He utilized the transfer portal to get there. So if there was a year where him not making it to the college football playoffs or getting the job done was most reasonable, in my opinion, it was last year. But those Oklahoma teams, they were stacked, and the lack of defense really hurt them. So for Lincoln Riley and USC to turn their attention to a Bear Alexander and full court blitz, I think that's an awesome sign. Look, I have no doubt that Lincoln Riley acknowledges that defense is the biggest need for his Trojans. And I think many people around college football were intrigued to see him keep Alex Grinch. But I also think that if the USC defense doesn't improve markedly this year, Alex Grinch's future will be up in the air. And at that point, it's going to be interesting to see what moves he makes. But if USC can pull in Bear Alexander, there's no doubt about it. He would be a difference maker for USC day one. He would wreak havoc for the Trojans, and he's exactly what they need. And it's going to be super intriguing to see what other institutions come up to the plate for Alexander, because reportedly this is going to be an NIL battle, and these NIL collectives are going to be scrambling, getting together every dollar they can to try and send to the very talented former 5-star. But I can't wait to hear from all of you. Let me know what you're thinking. The transfer portal has not even been open a week, and we're about to see a lot more movement. I have no doubt about it, especially after spring games happen, after these coaches start talking to the players about where they stand. There's still a lot of movement left to go in the transfer portal, and we need to strap in and get ready for it. I can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.